Hi guys, it's Kelly from Cards by Christine here with you on a Technique Thursday to share with you the torn strips technique. I love using scraps, and our beautiful DSP is so valuable that if you hold on to scraps, you feel like you want to use it because it's beautiful. So this card showcases a way to use those precious scraps. So in line with the whole Christmas in July philosophy, I am making this card using the Tidings and Trimmings DSP. Actually, it's kind of using the whole suite. I used a Sentiment, tiny but mighty, the die cuts in these little ivy leaves, and then obviously the focal here is on this beautiful DSP. So when we use our DSP, we save all the precious sniblets. Now, you may not have quite as many scraps as Chris does here, but what I did to start is I chose what DSP I wanted to use, and I wanted to kind of keep in the Christmas in July idea. So I chose and I think this is just called Tidings of Christmas 6x6 DSP. So that is the DSP that I chose. Then I picked out some of each of the patterns. Now there are 6 different designs. I don't think that's right. And I do have the catalog here. Let's see. Okay, so we've got paper, DSP. Okay. So, Tidings of Christmas, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There are 12 different designs in this pack. So I grabbed out some of each to determine what looked good together, and I ended up using 8 different patterns. So, and each is, I started with, I grabbed all the different sizes, or all the different patterns, and, you know, some of them, a strip like this was too skinny for this technique, so I kind of didn't use that. But all the strips that were about an inch or so, I grabbed all of them out and laid them out and chose the different patterns that I was going to use. I ended up using 8. Let me just shove that back in here and move that out of the way. So here's what essentially I am working with. Okay. So, paper tearing was huge in popularity when I started stamping. I've probably been stamping for 15 years or so. My talent has grown over the years, but paper tearing was like totally an in thing when I was stamping. So, I'm starting to see it come back. A bunch of techniques that I guess it's just like fashion. They go out of style and they come right back in. So there are 2 different kinds of paper. We've got our cardstock, which is colored through and through. So when you tear a piece of cardstock, this is soft suede. You've got soft suede on the bottom, top, on the bottom, and all the way through the middle. It is all soft suede, okay? When you tear, you want to start at the top and tear towards you, and then you'll get the ruffled edge, the nice, pretty, torn edge that we're looking for will be on the top. If you tear away from you, not only is that harder, but then this is the look you'll get, which looks fine. Maybe that's the look that you prefer, but you kind of want that core of the paper coming through. When you tear DSP, you've got a top pattern, a bottom pattern, and then the inside is white. So I'm going to tear this, and you see that white. That is what you're looking for. Now, when you tore towards you, you have white on this piece, and this remnant piece has that not so torn look to it, but when you flip it over, now both of your patterns have that white torn look to it. So that is 2 pieces, and I'll do that for all. This one I had left over from the other card, so I'm going to add that to my pile. Now, if you just tear it quickly or tear it without much intention, you're not going to get much texture or variety to the look, so you kind of want to like tear back and forth a little bit to give it a little bit of a look to it. Now this is the front and back of the same piece, so I don't need to worry about how much I'm tearing because I have plenty. So I'm kind of just like giving it a little more variation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. The bottom piece is not torn because it goes right to the edge of the card. With paper, there's a grain to it, so if you're tearing with the grain, it'll go a lot smoother than if you're tearing against the grain, and it's hard to know what way the grain of a paper goes. But if you're going to do this technique, you may want to use some scraps to experiment, and maybe use a DSP versus a colored cardstock to kind of get the feel for how they are different and how they tear differently. And obviously this card is using scraps, or it is designed to use scraps, so maybe you won't be heartbroken if you waste a couple of pieces as you're learning how you want to tear. All right, so now I have my ingredients for my card. I need my base. So I matted this on. One more thing I want to mention. I cleaned up my scraps before I started tearing them. So I cut them all to 3 inches wide so that they all were the same width, which just made it easier to put together. If I would have used all the random size scraps, I would have had more of a nightmare trying to put it together. So I cut each piece, like if I was just gonna use one side of it, I cut it to 3 inches wide by 1-ish inch tall, maybe 1.5 to accommodate the tear, because you tear a good 1/4 inch off at least. If I was intending to use the front and back, then I cut it to 3 inches by 3 inches, because then when cut in half, you've got roughly 1 inch remaining with then a torn edge in addition to that. So that's how I prepped my pieces before I started tearing. Then, for this particular design, I am using a 3 1/8 by 5 1/2. So it's the whole height of the card, and my card here is a top open card. I felt as though it went well with the whole top to bottom design that the card had. This was designed in phases. I feel like if I were to start over, I probably wouldn't have this stitched rectangle behind it. I'm not hating it, but I would love to see maybe like a Sahara sand ribbon coming off the sides here. I think that would be beautiful. But as it is, it's not, I don't hate it. So anyways, okay, so then you work from the bottom up, and I laid these all out. You know, I kind of played around with, you know, you didn't want 2 of the same prominent color next to each other. You didn't want too much white next to each other. You know, I only have 1 strip of red, not to mention red is my accent color in my stamp and my rhinestones. So I laid it out in a manner in which I liked the patterns, how they played together. And then I started gluing bottom up again. And I wanted to keep them as evenly spaced as possible. That is a little difficult. So you're definitely going to want to get an idea of spacing before you start gluing. And it is just a scrappy look for the card, so it's not imperative that they're evenly spaced, but you still want them to be somewhat even. Now, we're splitting 1/8 of an inch left to right here, so there's not a lot of wiggle room. And you're literally bringing 8 pieces to try to line up left to right. So it does take some patience to glue it down. I will say that, because even though as part of prepping, you cut them each to 3 inches wide, they're probably not all absolutely perfectly cut width-wise, but that is why I especially love using liquid glue, because now I stick it down and I have a little bit of time to wiggle. And I could have gone through and double checked all of these to make sure that they all were 3 or very, very, very close to the same width. Maybe it would have been helpful. I already see here that my second piece is a hair bigger than the rest. But it is what it is, and that is just a challenge to keep in mind as you're making this card, that the more legwork you put before you start gluing, the better your outcome will be. Okay, so just working my way up. So we've got 4 down, we're about halfway up the card, so I'm feeling pretty good about how my spacing is going. This technique, or this kind of layout, would look awesome on a slimline card. You could get a lot of variety of different paper patterns in there, so I challenge you to maybe try that. I've only designed 1 or 2 slimline cards before in my whole entire life, and I loved it. Like, just having a little extra real estate to work with was kind of a fun challenge. So yeah, if you like this technique, definitely go ahead and try it, and let us know. See, now here, that piece was a little bigger. It had a little bit larger of a scrap, so I think I left a little bit too much showing. Same here, this scrap that I'm currently gluing is cut a little bit taller than all the rest, so just need to be careful when I'm layering it. I'm keeping enough of each of the papers showing. And then the last piece that I did, I had some hanging over the top because just how it spaced out, I had a little bit too much extra. So I didn't do the best job spacing. I probably have a little bit too much of this color and maybe even a little bit too much of, you know, a couple of these. But either way, it's still nice enough. And while this is still wet, I'm going to skim just a hair off the side here because I can see that that one's a little too long and it was still wet, and why not, right? So much better. Okay, where did I have this one? Somewhere like that. Flip it over and trim off the excess. And now you have an absolutely beautiful focal piece that features just scraps of DSP. I love how this looks. Our DSP is designed so well to complement throughout the entire suite of sheets that this technique is a great way to show off a lot of beautiful imagery and really not need a whole lot more to finish off your card. So if you go ahead and use this technique, I'd love to see what DSP you choose to use to show off this technique. So please share with us if you do. And go ahead and post that in the comments. We'd love to see it. To finish off the card, I'll just walk you through the rest of what we did here. We've got an evening evergreen card base cut to 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2, so it's a hamburger style fold. And then I've got the largest stitched rectangle in basic white, glued down. The piece that we just built this onto is soft succulent in 3 1/8 by 5 1/2. That is held up by dimensionals, so it gives some extra layer. The season's greeting is stamped in cherry cobbler from the Tidings and Trimmings stamp set. It is fussy cut, just using some scissors. The ivy leaves are from Christmas Tidings dies, so this is all coordinating within the same bundle or suite. And last but certainly not least, we've got some basic rhinestones colored red with the dark cherry cobbler Stampin' Blends. So that's my card. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it gets you somewhat in the Christmas in July spirit. I was singing Christmas songs the whole time that I was designing it until I was like, this is ridiculous. I need to switch to Pandora. And then I started singing like Ed Sheeran and all those other songs that I like. But yeah, it really did kind of put me in a good headspace. Thinking about the holidays always makes me happy. So yeah, what do you think of the technique? What do you think of, are you a scrap hoarder? I tend to be. Sometimes I have troubles figuring out the best way to store my scraps and stuff like that, but I do try to save the itty bitties because you never know what they can be used for. And our paper is so beautiful that there's always something that it can spruce up. So I hope you enjoyed this technique. I hope you enjoyed watching me make this card, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Catch Chris later tonight live in the Hive for some card making. All right, I hope you have a great day.